The timesheets from Thailand told one story. Toprak Razgatlioglu, three-time world SBK champion, the most anticipated MotoGP rookie in years, finished 17th, buried 39 seconds behind the winner. Social media had the verdict within minutes. Reality check, humbling. The hype machine exposed, and then Neil Hodgson, former world champion, the man who had warned before the season that Toprak might start to hate MotoGP, watched the same race and called it a fantastic job. Two people watching the same race, two completely different conclusions. That split tells you everything about what is actually happening with Toprak Razgatlioglu in 2026. Subscribe, because this story is longer than one result. Hodgson's argument is not about the position. It is about the context behind it. New bike, new tyre, new braking system, carbon brakes that Toprak had never used in competition before Thailand, and which almost put him on the floor in the very first corner of the sprint. Michelin, rubber that behaves in ways that took him completely by surprise. The Pirelli, when you feel the spin, it's easy to manage, he explained. But when the Michelin spins, it doesn't stop again. The other riders know this tyre better, but for me, it's very difficult. You need to ride like a Moto2 style and open the gas very gentle, because this tyre is so sensitive. Read that again. A rider who won 3 world championships on rear-wheel control, who built his entire identity around managing motorcycle behaviour at the absolute limit, is describing a tyre that does something he has never experienced before, something he cannot yet predict, something that punishes every instinct he spent years developing. He is not behind because he has slowed down. He is behind because the reference points he built his career on do not apply here. And in that context, Hodgson looked at the gap to Quartararo, the factory Yamaha benchmark with multiple seasons on this machinery, and said, roughly 1 second per lap is not a bad job for a debut. That's not a bad job, he said. The cameras don't show that calculation. The timesheet doesn't explain it. But the gap to Quartararo is the real number that matters right now, not the gap to Bezzecchi. And what the cameras definitely didn't show is what Toprak was managing beneath the surface just to finish the race. He had an engine braking issue from lap 1 of the sprint that nearly put him on the floor in the first corner. I felt the front lock 2 times and I went wide. He was learning on the fly how to manage carbon brakes that behaved nothing like the steel brakes he had used his entire career. He was being mentored on braking technique mid-weekend by Andrea Dovizioso, a 15-time MotoGP race winner, because the way you brake in MotoGP requires unlearning instincts that had been built over thousands of superbike laps. If I try to be aggressive, the rear tyre locks up and I go offline, he said. I was used to being aggressive, especially in the early stages of braking, but now I'm trying to adapt without having to change my style too much. In a category where rookies who try to prove a point too early end up scattered across the gravel, Toprak's restrained 17th, staying upright, gathering data, not throwing the bike away chasing a position he had no tools to reach, may actually be the right call. It just doesn't look like that on TV. And in MotoGP, optics matter as much as strategy. If you want to follow this adaptation story all season, subscribe, because it gets more interesting from here, which brings the hype problem into sharp focus. Because this may be the most underrated challenge Toprak faces in 2026. He didn't arrive quietly. He arrived with 3 world SBK titles, a fanbase that had been demanding his MotoGP debut for years, a social media presence built entirely on spectacular highlights, and expectations that were always going to be impossible to manage in round 1. He is not just a rookie, he is the most anticipated rookie in recent memory. And that gap between what people expected to see and what they saw is the thing that generates the kind of online reaction that can get into a rider's head if they let it. The question that was supposed to dominate 2026 was, can he win? after Thailand, it has already shifted to, how long will this take? Hodgson says patience. The internet says pressure. And Toprak, caught between those two forces, has to manage his own psychology while simultaneously trying to rewire riding instincts that took years to build. Before the season, Hodgson had described this exact tension with precision. When you stop receiving praise, when you're no longer the hero, it's hard. It wears you down. He called Toprak's talent phenomenal, but he also said 2026 will not reveal that talent. It will reveal whether Toprak can endure a year in the shadows without letting the external noise pull him toward heroics, though bike cannot yet support. Thailand was lap 1 of that psychological test. Toprak finished 17th and said, "I still have a lot to learn. That is not a defeated rider. That is a rider who is processing the right things. But the noise around him is not going to get quieter. But here is the layer that the social media reaction completely missed, and it changes the entire frame of what 2026 means for Toprak. Pirelli becomes MotoGP's official tyre supplier in 2027. The tyre that Toprak spent years mastering. The tyre he understands at a level that almost nobody else on the current MotoGP grid can match. Where it spins, how it behaves at the limit, exactly how hard you can push it before it gives up, and how to manage it over race distance in every temperature condition the calendar throws at you. The Michelin that is currently making his life miserable in every corner of every circuit will be gone after this season. Crash.net confirmed it before Thailand. Yamaha signed Toprak on a long-term deal specifically because his Pirelli knowledge is expected to provide a major development boost to the brand when the tyre switch arrives. That context reframes everything. 2026 is not Toprak's season to dominate. It is his season to survive, collect laps, build the physical and mental database of MotoGP machinery, and arrive at 2027 with all of that in his toolkit, plus the one advantage that nobody else on the grid will have. The tyre he already knows better than almost anyone. The riders currently beating him are specialists on a tyre he has raced competitively for less than one Grand Prix. In 12 months, that advantage is gone. Whether Toprak is ready to capitalise when the switch arrives, whether the V4 is developed enough to give him the tools to fight, whether a full season of MotoGP laps have turned alien sensations into muscle memory. That is the real question 2026 needs to answer. Not whether he can win in Thailand. The timesheets say 17th. The full picture says something far more complicated. Drop your take in the comments, hype or patience, and subscribe for the Round 2 update.